Hello, crypto world. Welcome to the Chart Historian. My name is Justin, and on this channel, I delve deep into crypto charts, exploring chart structures, fractals, and patterns. So in this video, I am going to introduce a new chart to my repertoire. It is a very important chart. It is the West Texas Intermediate. This is the oil chart, and oil touches all of us in this modern world. So it is well worth becoming familiar with the macro structure. By the end of this video, you will have a good understanding of the macro chart and where we are in that chart and what, this is the important part, what you should expect in the coming days to take place. So I am on a day candle here. Now I am going to go back all the way to 1979, and I am also going to be on a week candle. So here we are. This is a zoomed out picture. Now, there is this part of the structure that is hard to see, but it is very important. It's an important part of the structure. So I am going to copy and paste this so it becomes easier to see. So there we go. Furthermore, I am going to place some boxes onto this structure so we can separate the different parts of the chart. So this is the box that we will focus on. It began in 1979 with this move up. It then declines. So the fundamental parts of this box, or the structure within this box, is this move up and then it declines. And then we see this part of the chart right here. It moves down to a low. However, it's not just a simple move down. We see that it materialized in two different waves. So wave 1 and wave 2. Wave 2 brings it to the low. After this move down, the oil chart changes directions and begins to move up. So in this part of the chart, we see this move up consists of a primary wave, a first wave, and then a second wave that is a parabolic wave that comes to a peak. So at this point, the oil chart crashes. After this crash, we see two waves, wave 1 and wave 2, and that completes this structure right here. Now, we need to stop and talk about what a fractal does and does not do when it repeats. So when a fractal repeats, what we should expect to see is that same fundamental idea, the same pattern. We want to see that structure being repeated. Now, what we cannot expect is it to be identical in the sense that it's going to be the same height, it's going to be the same depth, it's going to be the same timing. So this brings us to an important point. When a fractal repeats, the timing, the height, and the depth, they're always going to be unique. They're going to be original. So that means a fractal can repeat on a much larger scale or on a much smaller scale. It also means that parts of fractals can be much larger and other parts can be smaller, but the overall structure should still be repeated. So what we are after is not necessarily a prediction of how high something will go or how low something will go, but a roadmap, what the next move will be. Just like over here, this structure started with a move up and then a decline. We see that take place here, a move up and then a decline. Now what takes place next is a two-wave down structure that brings it to a low. So we see that take place here. Here is wave 1, and then here is wave 2. Wave 2 brings it to a low, just like we saw over here. What happens next? So the oil chart changes directions, and it starts to move up. So we see that over here. This part gets interesting because, like I was telling you, timing, height, and depth, they're always going to be unique and original. Well, we see a good example of this here. So this move up was accomplished in two waves. You had the first wave and then the second wave that was parabolic and brought it to a peak. We see the same thing here. Here is wave 1 and here is wave 2, which is a parabolic wave that brought the oil price to a peak. Now, since this is on a much larger scale, we see much more granularity of what that wave actually looked like on the way up. Here, it took place so fast, this is like a a very small picture that you have to really zoom in to see the characteristics of this wave up. Now, after this peak, it comes crashing down, and we see that happen here. Let's step back and examine the differences between this parabolic move up and the original parabolic move up. So this one was a much smaller move up when you compare it back to this part of the structure right here, these two waves that brought it to a low. So this is a good example of height, depth, and timing all being different. It's on a much larger scale. The timing is different. And this part of the structure has had much greater height compared to this. They both crash, but this crash over here was actually much greater when compared to this part of the structure. This crash didn't get below here, whereas here it did. So this is an interesting example of those forces, timing, height, and depth, changing a fractal appearance while leaving the structure intact. So it moves up when it's supposed to, it moves down when it's supposed to, but it's just on a different timing, height, and depth scale. So what do we see after this crash? Well, over here, the original structure is the two waves, and over here, we see, again, two waves. Now, this wave is, well, first of all, let's put things in perspective. This crash was not as drastic and as deep as this one. So if it wasn't as deep, naturally this second wave will seem larger, which we see it do. So here we have wave 1. And now, folks, as you can see, here's wave 2. We are currently working on wave 2. So what I want to do next is I want to copy and paste this structure over here onto here. Now, to do that, I'm going to have to adjust it for timing, height, and depth. And the way to accurately do that is I'm going to have to break it up to each part. So I'm going to have to match this part to this part. I'm going to have to match this wave right here to this wave, and so on and so forth. Okay, so here is that fractal copied and pasted onto this side of the chart. So it is this structure right here, copy and pasted onto this part of the chart. And as I was saying, each part is broken into the different parts that I could easily use to match it. We're zoomed in a little closer. So we have the first wave, the second wave, we have the move up, and there are some small differences, but actually they're not really even much differences. For instance, here the fractal dips, whereas on the chart it doesn't look like it dips, but actually if you take this, you could go even further matching it than I did. So you have this move up right here, comes to a peak, drops, moves back up again. Both the chart and the fractal do it. Just the timing is still a little different. I didn't get that into the weeds doing this. But as we see, the first wave here, the second wave, and this is interesting. So even this second wave right here that brings it to a peak, over here you don't see the characteristics of the wave because it's so small, but once you copy and paste this fractal, it does have those same characteristics. So as you can see, it is a fairly close match. Now, I included this part of the next part of the next repetition of this same structure. If it repeats, I mean, we got some potential crazy spikes in oil. Now, this doesn't mean it's going to go this high. This is around $300. It could go lower. It could be much lower. It could be higher, actually, too. More importantly, let's focus on what is at hand and what we should expect potentially to take place in the coming days. So we saw this peak, which wrought great turmoil for our economy. Unfortunately, we are going to see another potential move up in oil. Now, again, we don't know the exact height. It could be lower than this. It also could be higher than this. But what we do know is that oil is going to continue moving up. It potentially could even go like this fractal ends here. This one actually is higher. So it could potentially be a higher move up than here. These are things that you should be aware of. once it gets into this, the whole structure is starting anew. And again, this is just a representation. If it continues at this scale, I'm not saying it will, we could see something very large to take place. I want to switch gears. Now, we started in 1979. I want to go back even further. So this is the very beginning of the oil chart, and it's very difficult to read. However, if you take this structure and copy it right here, you see that there is some movement right here. Well, if you actually take this part of the chart and even this part right here and adjust it for the timing, height, and depth, and copy and paste it over here. So this is what it looks like. It doesn't have the granularity, the clarity. Even this part is, once adjusted for timing, height, and depth, is actually representative of what this structure is. So this over here, once adjusted for timing, height, and depth, is actually the same idea at play, albeit in a different timing, and it is very blurry. This one has so much more clarity, and that is why I started with this structure as opposed to this structure. But here's an important thing. Usually the very beginning of the chart is the original structure, and what takes place after that original structure is a copy of that original structure. Every time that structure repeats, it has a unique appearance because the timing, the height, and the depth are always unique, but the fundamental structures or parts should be repeated. So here we have that move up. It's showing here. If you zoom in, there's this part right here where it does the waves, which is over here, and then it switches gears. It moves up again. So right here, it crashes, and then this part right here, this is this huge, long area, whereas this time around, it was completed in a much shorter amount of time. So even this part, as difficult as it is to read, it is still a representation of what this structure is, and this structure is a representation of what this structure is. So as you can see, the oil chart is a repetitive structure. So here we are, zoomed in on where we are today. We have some potentially exciting times ahead of us if this is to continue to repeat, which I have no reason to believe it won't. The bigger these structures are, usually the stronger they are. So we just don't know the timing, the height, and the depth of this unrealized portion of the fractal. Well, people, I hope you found this video interesting. If you did, it'd be much appreciated if you hit that thumbs up button. You know, this is original technical analysis. You're not going to find someone that does what I just did. This is something that I have discovered. So if you found this type of technical analysis interesting, hit that subscribe button because I will continue to follow up on this chart. Also, I'm a new channel, so if you don't hit that subscribe button, you may have a hard time finding me again. This is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. I am so glad you caught this video. I hope you catch my next one. Have a great day, and bye for now.